Hello and welcome to my second video. This time we're going to talk about what is a libertarian. So I'm a libertarian. You're probably not. Hopefully you are. What is one? What does it mean? So first and foremost, libertarians believe in small, limited government. So what that means is that you, the individual, come first before the state. The government is not important and shouldn't be. So for us, the most important thing in life is individual freedom, private property, wealth, and peace. So libertarians can either be on the left or the right. I personally am on the right. So my priorities are 1. Low taxation. 2. A small military. 3. Anti-interventionist foreign policy. 4. Open borders. 5. A free market. And 6. Privatization over nationalization. So on the left, you get thinkers like Bakunin and Chomsky. And on the right, you get thinkers like Hayek and Mises. Although Hayek kind of moved to the left. So for me as a libertarian, one of the things I find most interesting is the issue of trust. When I was teaching in university and you talk to 18-year-olds in a seminar room, you ask them, do you trust the wealthy? Do you trust CEOs and executives of large organizations? And they say, God, no, we can't stand them. Okay, fair enough. Then ask, but do you trust politicians? And they also say no. So you get this theme where a lot of people want to go tax the rich. We need to tax the rich and take more funds from them for the state to use for whatever project you want to launch. However, where are those taxes going to go? Who is going to dictate what we do with them and where we distribute it? Politicians. But you also don't trust politicians. So why? The point here is that business people, they're accountable to shareholders. You know, they don't want to be corrupt. They don't want to be, to put out a bad product, because on a free market, a genuinely free market, they pay the price for it. So it's not in their interest to be crooked or sell a bad product or be corrupt. Politicians, on the other hand, they're accountable to voters. Kind of. For example, if you get a Conservative MP, this is an example, a Conservative MP in the Southwest, rural region, they're in a safe seat. There's not going to be much accountability there because it's a safe seat. It's going to be very unlikely or very difficult for people to vote them out. But the difference is the politician, they have less accountability, but they also have less to offer because they don't make a product. Politicians aren't innovators. They're not thinkers that create these amazing products that make our lives better. Really, when you think about it, you ask yourself, could I live in a world without government and politicians? The answer is probably yes, actually, yeah, I probably could. So what I'm really getting at is that, for example, the private sector is a lot better and more efficient than the public sector. Just a fact. Because people are, in life, attracted to money and profit. They just are. We're self-interested people. If you aren't, the chances are you either are a very, very good ethical person or you're a liar. And in my case in life, it's usually been the latter. People pretend they care about tolerance and society and togetherness and, working for the common good, but they're usually full of shit, to be honest. So the private sector, think about if you had the money, if you won the lottery, where would you send your kid to school? Probably most likely a private school. If you could afford it and you were being honest with yourself, you'd send them to a private school. Why? Because it's a higher standard, higher quality of education. Why is that? Well, it's because they can afford to pay more, therefore they get the best teachers. Similarly, in private healthcare, you get the best doctors and nurses, obviously. Politicians, on the other hand, public sector. These aren't people that are innovators, like I said. You couldn't get a committee of politicians together and say, build me the next iPhone. They couldn't do it because they're not those kind of people. So really what I'm getting at is you ask yourself the question, what do politicians actually do for me? And I'll come back to this question in a minute. So I believe that libertarians are the most consistent ideology. So you get, for example, the Conservative Party, who might believe in business over state intervention. That's actually not the case since Theresa May, but park that. Say they believe in the wealthy and wealth creation, entrepreneurialism and business. Okay, that's free market. That's very libertarian. But they also believe in getting involved in the market in places like the apprenticeship levy or having a strong military. Well, that's very anti-libertarian. So it's very inconsistent. You get the same with the left. The Labour Party has many, many inconsistencies because people see the right-left spectrum, the ideological spectrum, and they don't really see the fact that these parties, they're either on the right or the left or the centre, But actually, when you break down their policies, they're all over the place. Whereas a libertarian, we are just so consistent. We're across the board. We believe in small government and the power of the individual across the board. So that means, yes, I believe in private healthcare. I believe in privatizing the NHS, which makes you sound like a horrible, far-right extremist. However, I believe in open borders, which you associate with the left. I believe in abolishing nuclear weapons, and I don't believe in a strong military. So these things are on the left, and I don't believe in the monarchy. I fucking hate the monarchy, obviously, because it reminds us that we are, in fact, second-class citizens. In the 21st century, we are second-class citizens to these people who were just born wealthy, and their entire business model relies on the premise that a long time ago, they just managed to convince uneducated people that they had a direct message to God and that they were just better than we were, and they just had this power. They were just born with it, and do not question why. We just were. And centuries later, we just kind of go, oh, aren't they nice? No, they're not. If you watch The Crown, but I digress. My point is that if you looked at the things I believe in, it looks like I'm all over the place on the left-right map. However, it's just consistent across the board. Small government, limited government, power of the individual, power of the free market to do as it dictates. Simple. So the best cases of libertarianism, and it's never been, when people trash the free market or the free market doesn't work, it's actually never been tried. People throw around the term free market way too often. It's never actually been tried. An actually free market. In the UK, for example, when you talk about privatising the NHS, they say, oh, what, you want to just turn it into the free market America, the free market, the free healthcare market in America, and look how much that's failed, and people have died. Healthcare in America was never a free market. You had state mandates, for example. Before Obamacare, there was never a free market. So people use that way too much, and they don't understand the definition of it. We've never seen a free market, a totally free market. It's never happened, unfortunately. But the best examples are Switzerland today, and throughout its history, it's an extremely decentralized system where the leader of a local canton, the local kind of borough or region or town, actually has more power than the president of the entire country. Then you also get New Zealand. That's another one that's pretty good for freedom. And then California, where they, like Switzerland, have initiatives and referendums on a regular basis. So people at the bottom have, quite a lot of feed in to the power structure and the policy making of the top. It's quite hard as a libertarian to get people to see your perspective, and particularly in the UK, it's quite niche. But it kind of goes without saying that power is bad, because we all know that power is bad. We've all had bosses or people that we work with that the power just goes to the head. You give people a tiny bit of power, someone that works on your level, and then all of a sudden they get promoted to a supervisor role, and all of a sudden they're a complete arsehole, and it just changes them like that. We've all seen it. We see it all the time. But anywhere that power has been at its greatest with the state, it's gone badly. It never ends well. The Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, China, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, never ends well. Human rights abuses, lots of death, famine, poverty. It just never works. And for some reason, people on the left refuse to learn from the lessons of history. And it's, for people on the right, conservatives or free marketeers and libertarians, it's just like banging your head against a wall, because you just want to shake them and say, have you never read a book? Like, this is crazy. How do you think that politicians and government are good? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you were looking at, if I was to explain libertarianism as case studies, it would be, obviously people always point to this, the 1980s financial deregulation and deregulation in a lot of industries under Margaret Thatcher in the UK and Ronald Reagan in the US. Then they were not libertarians, either of them, but it's a good example of what we believe in coming into practice. So the financial deregulation, the technology we have today, as amazing it is, Netflix, Amazon Prime, like next day delivery or same day delivery, the iPhone, all these incredible gadgets that are just, just like the water we drink every day, they're just normal to us now, wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for the deregulation that happened in the 1980s. Simply wouldn't have happened. And then you've got the liberalization agenda of Ludwig Erhard in Germany after the Second World War, who turned Germany basically from a failed state into an economic miracle, and really made Germany what it is today through a program of free market economic policies that was tremendously successful. Then you've got the 2016 Brexit vote, but it's a difficult one because it kind of is and it isn't. I campaigned for vote leave. I was working in Parliament at the time, so I was, campaigning for vote leave, and I stand by it, because for people like me, it wasn't about immigration. People on the left and Remainers just wanted to make us look like bigoted, racist idiots. For me, race was never a factor. It's the fact that the European Commission is the most powerful entity of the European Union, and it's 100% unelected. It has most of the power, and nobody within it has been elected. That's just insane in the 21st century, and that was my issue. The fact that it's not a democratic institution. Never was, and it was never supposed to be. And then also, this guy, Edward Snowden, what can I say? A bastion of freedom, taught us how to stay safe on the internet, taught us what the governments were doing that we really had no right knowing. I mean, we do have a right knowing, the term, we had no business knowing, really. We were never going to find out. And these programs that were spying on us, our own states, we never would have known about it. We never would have learned about this stuff if he hadn't sacrificed his life and career to put this information out there, simply because he thought it was wrong what they were doing. So he is kind of, a hero of the libertarian movement. So libertarianism today, the biggest concerns for us, kind of, the things that we care passionately about. First of all, the attack on free speech. So activists and, snowflake society and, the whole woke agenda and cancel culture. The fact that, with the political correctness now, you can't say anything. I mean, when I'm planning these videos, for example, I'm like, can I say that? Should I be doing a video on this? And that's fucking mental. Like, you should be able to express yourself however you want, as long as it's not inciting hate or, a physical attack on someone, or you're threatening someone in a physical way. Anything else should be on the table, because we're human beings. We speak. That's how we communicate. That's how we've developed through history. That's what makes us special. That's how we stand out from the animal species. We talk and we communicate, and to limit that is fucking scary, because it happened under the Nazis, it happened under a lot of regimes, like I've listed before, and it never ends very well, because it means that one caste of people get to dictate the ethical remit of everybody else, and they get to speak their mind. People on the left get to say, fucking die, Tory, die, burn in hell, Amber Rudd, or whatever, and these things have been said. But then anyone else is bigoted and, intolerant. And it's just such a hypocrisy, because those people on the left, they hate rich people, they hate Republicans and Conservatives, but they try and teach us all not to hate, and they're hypocrites. And that's the major problem I find, and I think a lot of people find with the whole cancel culture, is the massive hypocrisy, because we're all flawed, and we can all be hypocrites at times. These people on the left that hate big corporations, they still wear Nike trainers. They still, sit in their class, because I've had this before with students where they go, we should march into buildings, steal all their assets, and kick them out of the country. But the person saying this literally has a MacBook sat in front of them on the table. They're wearing Nike trainers, and they go home every day and charge their phone in a wall provided by British Gas, and they go to Starbucks for lunch. It's just mental, and just don't see the contradiction that they are enjoying the free market. Well, it's not free, but they're enjoying, what these private enterprises have to offer, and it undeniably makes their lives better. These students will use Amazon Prime to get their books, next day delivery at the cheapest rate, but they still think they can spout all this hate about it. It's just crazy. But yeah, the attack on free speech. I mean, for me, it's in universities. That's what scares me the most, because it's supposed to be an institution of expanding knowledge and education and information. And if you are censored, you can't do that. You can't do any of that, and that is scary. Secondly, and again, this is something you probably associate with the left, but it's the growth of big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter. I mean, I don't use Twitter, never really understood the concept. It's kind of something I've done through work when I've worked in communications and stuff, but personally, I haven't been on it in years. I look at it for sports news sometimes, but rarely. And Facebook, I can't stand the thing at all. I think it's crap. Like, purely from this is not a political argument. I just think it's a really clunky, outdated, really crappy, shoddy website. If you ever try to join a group in Facebook, it's just so clunky and it looks like a browser from the 1990s. But that's just my personal preference. But yeah, the growth of power of those organizations is scary, and what they're able to do with our data, where they're gathering the data from, where it's going, and the devices that they're putting out, like the Echo Dot, and are these things listening to us, and we don't really know the answer to a lot of these questions. And devices that you're using over Wi-Fi, are they able to hack into my baby camera in my daughter's room? That kind of stuff. We don't really know, but it creeps us out because we've learned that those things have happened, and that people can hack into these things, and they are hacking into these things, and there's actually money to be made from the data produced by these devices and websites. So it kind of creeps us out, and it's what we don't know that is more disconcerting. Then also, I mean, particularly in the UK, the major concern for us, and it has been for a long time, is the unsustainable nature of the National Health Service, because it's not very good. I mean, my partner is a nurse, and she grew up in Switzerland, so she saw a private healthcare system, through insurance, and now she works in the NHS. She doesn't like it very much. She's finds so much laziness and incompetence, and there's not much accountability in the NHS. I mean, when I worked in Parliament, we were talking to someone who was a head of an NHS group. I won't say which city, but she was the head of an NHS foundation, and she found that she was asked to come in and do a monitoring check on the chief exec of a hospital, who had, I think they'd failed standards checks and stuff, and there'd been complaints, and they basically investigated this guy, recommended that he got fired, and he did. But what the NHS did, rather than firing him, they just moved him to a different part, and he became a regulator. And he actually became the regulator of this woman that had been instrumental in getting him removed because he was crap. This guy then became her regulator. It's madness, and you find that stuff a lot. And anyone that's ever gone to a GP, their primary motivation is to get you out of their office as soon as possible, and you're asked to make you have to make different appointments for different ailments. Instead of just being able to go in there and talk about everything, they'd rather you waste your time and their time in the long term by having 5 different appointments. And I'm on a waiting list now. I have been for 6 months, still heard nothing back. I've been told it's going to be a year. I actually think it's going to be more than that. In the press, it says it's going to be about 18 months. It's not good. It's not sustainable. And the problem is that it's been ring fenced as an issue now, where the government, their solutions are 1, throw more money at it, or 2, throw more money at it, because there's no other option. You're not allowed to dare utter the P word, privatisation. You can't say that, or any kind of private involvement. You can't go there. And the Labour Party, the people on the left have been crying out about privatisation, and for like a decade now, they're under the entire Conservative administration saying, "Oh my God, you're privatising the NHS! Stop the privatisation of the NHS! They're cutting our NHS up." It hasn't been privatised. I wish it had, but it hasn't, because actually, when they talk about privatisation, what they mean a lot of the times are organisations like Macmillan or Age UK that help contribute to providing services in the NHS, these people on the left want you to believe that fucking Halliburton and BAE are cutting people open on an operating table. That's not what it means. That's not what privatisation means. And privatisation, it also means private companies providing food and bedding and towels for the NHS, and private companies building the hospitals. So there's this myth on the left about all these insidious, creepy wealth, like fucking stock traders going up and cutting people up on the table. Not happening. It's not like that. That's not what it means. Privatisation should mean just selling the whole thing off and allowing it to be like France, New Zealand, Australia, Switzerland, Japan, Japan to a less extent, but it does have private involvement, and America, where these, we kind of marvel at American healthcare. Doctors and nurses in the UK could only dream of going to work in America, because my partner, she sees staff come over from America and they're just so much better because they're so much better, educated and trained and qualified, because there's more money in it. They get way better salaries, so it attracts the cream of the crop, and frankly, nurses in the UK, not that great. And GPs, like I said, they want to give you the cheapest medication. They want to get you out of their office as quickly as possible. And the waiting times for everything now really is just at an unsustainable level. And throwing money at it endlessly, not going to solve anything. And then the final kind of concern for libertarians, and we see this a lot, is something that Hayek called the ratchet effect, which is where, say, a politician comes in and to win office, to win an election, they have to promise something. They have to promise you, the voter, something that makes you go, I want that guy. So they offer you a new program, and it maybe gives you a bursary, gives you there's a new welfare fund. You get a new allocation of money. You get 50 quid a month, right? And they get in because it's popular. So they're elected. Brilliant. New program's created. That new program is now created, and it makes the government that little bit bigger because it has more power. Maybe it has to tax more to pay for it, and most certainly it has to create a new bureaucracy and administration to implement this new program, new software and new computers, new buildings, whatever. You can see where I'm going. So it's like things like the NHS or universal credit, the apprenticeship levy, lots of different programs. What then happens is that program is most likely there to stay, because to win a vote, you have to promise something. You have to be popular. You have to offer people something. You have to offer them a concession. You can't come in and say, I'm going to cut that, and that. You're never going to win. You're never going to get into office. So what happens is these programs, particularly the popular ones, and the NHS is the biggest example, are cherished so much because they're free, frankly. They become like a national champion. They become super popular, and you cannot touch them. With the NHS, you can't even talk about it. You can't even talk about the actual options on the table. You can't talk about increasing tax. You can't talk about privatising it. You just have to leave it. Just leave it alone. And that's what happens. There's a ratchet effect where the government gets bigger and bigger and bigger because new politicians come in and offer something new and new and new and new. And you find that the government is just huge with all these different departments and bureaucracies and programs and schemes and different welfare funds, all this stuff. It just keeps growing and growing, but no one can ever come in and cut it back down because it would be sustainable and efficient if it did kind of grow and decrease. And libertarians probably wouldn't need to exist as an ideology if government did kind of trim the fat and unfortunately, politicians, you can't say, I'm going to cut all these things. I'm going to cut universal credit. I'm going to get rid of this. There's this program that was introduced by the last government where citizens get £100 a week. I'm going to come in and cut that. Unless it's a time of crisis like a recession, you ain't going to do it. So politicians, because they're short-term minded and all they really care about, let's face it, is their own power, their own status, their own position. and winning elections. They don't really, they don't have a long-term goal for the country. They just care about the next few election cycles so they can grow their career and then get out. So they don't, they're not thinking about 50 years time. So what happens is more programs are introduced, the government gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and no one ever brings it back down in size. The reason that's a problem is that the government is now just that their power has expanded so much, and there's no turning back. There's no turning back that clock or, unringing the bell. Now, for me personally, I believe that we're all libertarians. Everybody on this planet, to some degree, is a libertarian. They're a libertarian about something. There's one issue, or there's one personality trait they personally have where they would identify as a libertarian. So let's say you're a Republican in America. You believe in low taxation, which is a libertarian ideal. If you're a Democrat in America, you believe in, you're pro-immigration, you believe in open borders. Again, very libertarian principle. You're a conservative in the UK, so you believe in business and enterprise. That's a very libertarian principle once again. Or you vote for Labour in the UK, you identify as a socialist, then you believe in human rights. That's really important to you. Or the value of the community. But let's say human rights. Again, the most important thing for a libertarian. Human rights, our civil liberties, most important thing. Lib Dem, if you vote for the Lib Dems in the UK, you are against snooping. You don't like WhatsApp, don't trust Facebook and Twitter, and you don't trust the UK state and our central intelligence agencies to be ethical and stay the fuck out of our business. And you believe it's our right to have privacy and freedom from the state and these big, all-powerful businesses. Massive libertarian perspective. Then if you're on the kind of far right, say you vote for UKIP, then you are anti-EU because you think, how can I be governed by an institution in Brussels when I live in the UK, say I live in Devon, but there are policies that affect my life, say I'm a fisherman, for example, there are policies that massively affect my life that are dictated not in Westminster, which is still not close to me, but at least I vote in it. I vote in the people that will ultimately make those decisions on that policy or that piece of legislation. Instead of that, the power is actually coming from Brussels, where, like I say, you can vote in the European Union Parliament, but the European Union Parliament doesn't have anywhere near as much power. And at the most, it has a co-decision power with the European Commission. But the European Commission is completely unelected. So again, that's a massive libertarian perspective. So you get all these different kinds of people that would hate to sit in a pub next to one another, but they all believe things that make them libertarians. Because at some point in every ideology, we don't like power. We don't like power whether it's with politicians, or we don't like power whether it's with big businesses and the wealthy and capitalists. We all, and that's where you get the kind of left libertarian, because for them, the enemy is the powerful capitalists and the establishment and the elites. And then for people like me that are more on the right, it's the government, it's politicians that are elected. So we all, to some degree, are libertarians. If you wanted to get more information on libertarianism, like what kind of organizations would you look at, what kind of books would you read and where would you go to? So in America, you've got the Cato Institute, you've got the Ayn Rand Institute, you've got the Mises Institute, you've got the FEE, and the Institute of Humane Studies, and what's the last one? Learn Liberty. They've got like a great YouTube selection of videos that teach you about libertarianism and classical liberalism and freedom and individual rights and free market and all this stuff in really cool, like digestible videos. In the UK, you've got things like the Adam Smith Institute, although they've rebranded and now call themselves neoliberalists rather than libertarians. Questionable decision. I'll make a video soon about neoliberalism and the fact that it doesn't actually exist. It's not actually a thing. But the other institute is the Institute for Economic Affairs, who are amazing. They're great people. I'm really good friends with them. They're fucking awesome. They're really nice people. super helpful. And yeah, if you go to their events or read any of their stuff, they'll help you explain all this stuff amazingly. You've got the Heritage Foundation in America as well. The Cobden Centre in the UK, that's a really good one. And Liberty Fund as well. That's a good one for books. If you're thinking about modern thinkers, kind of modern writers, there's people like Jason Brennan, Brian Kaplan, Hans Hermann Hoppe, and Johan Norberg. These are pretty good writers. Like you can get some really good books from these kind of guys. But it's quite a lot of libertarians, but it's mostly, unfortunately, an American thing. But yeah, there's a lot out there being written to this day. Reason Magazine, read Reason Magazine as well. All right, guys, I hope that made sense. But I'll be making more videos in the future very soon, and I'm probably going to try and I'll probably emphasize some of these things and kind of break them down a little bit more, go into a bit more detail, things like the ratchet effect, things like the NHS. We'll have a video of its own, I'm sure, and kind of go into a bit more detail. And yeah, if you've got any questions, just comment below or send me an email. All right, guys, see you soon.